The mission of the LCC is to take scientific information and develop it for conservation practice and developing best practices, as well as implementing on-the-ground resource decisions. But there's a lot of uncertainty these days about climate change, land use change, and the nature of conservation is really, the challenges of conservation are different than they were. Its mission is conservation, and cooperative is a key word because it involves numerous partners who have conservation responsibilities on the whole landscape. And so it used to be, back in the 19th century, that conservation could take place with creating national parks and national forests, and you put a fence around it, you manage inside the boundary of the fence. And what we're seeing today is the nature of conservation stressors are transboundary. They go across these fences. Climate change doesn't know boundaries. It's global. And so we're seeing global change with invasive species, atmospheric transport of contamination, changing atmospheric conditions, climate, temperature, precipitation, changing shifts in the range of species and the conditions and the habitats and connectivity that those species require. So this challenge requires us to forecast change, look ahead, and develop the science to guide conservation across boundaries. Well, as President Gonzalez said this morning, the students themselves are the audience for this effort themselves, but they're also part of the solution, and bringing students into the research is something that we at USGS like to do. We use many students in our research program, both undergraduate and graduate, and they kind of do a lot of the hard work, actually, to get muddy, the collecting the data. So being on a university campus is great because it's a resource for us, and it's also gives that a chance to interact. So an example of a project we're working on with the LCC is the impact of sea level rise in San Francisco Bay on the tidal wetlands. And when you look at global models, the scale of those models is not really adequate to guide management at the local scale. And the Fish and Wildlife Service is owner of numerous small parcels in the Bay Area. How can they adapt to the challenge of sea level rise? So our project is to really downscale those efforts at the global scale and to conduct precise measurements on a parcel-by-parcel basis to look at marsh elevations, to look at species distributions, how the vegetation is changing with salinity, the whole pickleweed forest. So we get an idea of what do the animals need, what's the forecast rates of change at the local scale, and how can managers set priorities on the local landscape.